question for you guys. When we started this podcast, what did you think it was going to be? And I'm going to start with you, Mitch, because you've been here since episode 1.
Yeah, no, when you first came to say, like, pitch the idea to me, I just kind of assumed that it was going to be like every other men's health podcast I had heard of, where we're talking about, I don't know, lifting or running or something like that.
Yeah, all right. John, you joined us a little bit later. I think your first appearance was episode 79. That was back in 2021. You had more regular appearances starting in about 2024. So you don't have the depth of history with this podcast, but when we started it, when we first asked you on, what did you think it was? And was that what it was? And how has it morphed in your mind?
So if I'm to be very fair and honest, I listened to 0 episodes before 79 before I was asked on.
Yeah. Okay.
I hope it's not a rub. I just didn't know it existed. And then I was asked to be on it and I was actually excited.
What was it that excited you? Yeah.
I like what I do. I like talking about what I do. And I feel like education is like 90% of what I do in medicine. Is if I help you understand what you're supposed to do, you can actually do it. If you go in and I just say, here's a pill, take it, goodbye, this gives me an outlet and an ability to kind of talk about the things of why we do what we do and to help people understand how they can get the most out of the care that they're going to seek, right? So to me, that was the most exciting part for me. And then coming on as a more regular fixture, I really enjoyed, the vibe you guys had and just being here and getting to know you guys better. I was like, this is a really fun opportunity with 2 really good people to just kind of grow this and see where it goes. I don't know that I had a ton of expectations other than I was excited because I enjoyed both of you.
Cool. Well, we enjoy you. Well, I enjoy you. I can't.
That was sweet. Yeah, no, I enjoy John.
All right. Yeah, I just didn't want to speak for you. I'm sorry. When I started this podcast, when I first came up with this idea, I thought that it was going to be us giving guys the answers. Like, here's a recipe. You eat better, you move your body, you don't drink too much, you go to the doctor before something explodes, and boom, you got health, right? But over time, that's changed. I think the show's changed. We've changed. It's kind of not a podcast about advice anymore, although there is certainly advice and information. I think we, discuss what health looks like and what it looks like for real guys at different points in real guys' lives, the struggles, the questions, and these goals that, if you're like me, they just keep shifting all the time. So for episode 200, we're going to talk about what this show has meant, how our thinking has changed as a result of it, and what we're still figuring out. This is Who Cares About Men's Health, with information, inspiration, and a different interpretation of men's health. I'm Scott. I bring the BS. Normally, I would introduce the MD to my BS, but I'm going to introduce producer Mitch. Welcome to episode 200. You've been with me for 200 shows.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Hey.
All right. And the MD to my BS is Dr. John Smith, who has had his first appearance back in about 2021. So not as much of a fixture, as he said, as Mitch has been, but we've sure enjoyed having you over the past couple of years. John, thanks for being here again.
Hey, I've appreciated being here. Thanks for having me, guys.
What's something that you thought was universally true about health that turned out to be more complicated? So when we first started this podcast, again, the idea was tips and tricks and information and let's try to break it down into the simplest terms. We even came up with this thing called the Core 4, which is if you watch your nutrition, your activity, your sleep, and your mental health, that'll go a long way to being healthy. And if you can kind of block out all this other noise and focus on those things, and I think there's still validity in that.
Agree.
Yeah.
But is there something that you thought, okay, this is universally true, or this is really going to be simple, and it ended up being more complicated than that? Mitch, I'm going to start with you.
So when I first started, I kind of came in with, I would say, not the most healthy idea of what health looked like, right? I mean, for someone who grew up, I'm solid millennial, I'm 36 this year. My idea of health all those episodes ago was what I saw on magazines, what I saw on TV. This idea that, men's health means that you're jacked, that you're ripped. Health equals appearance. And in turn, to look like that type of person, you needed to be in the gym every single day. You needed to be eating super perfect all the time. And that's the only way you could be healthy. And that meant I was kind of always an outsider. Even when I started producing this show, I was like, I guess I'll just be a producer. I'll just edit this show. I am not the type of man, right, that this show was for in my brain. right? I was not healthy man, right? It's just, and it's so weird to even think back to like that kind of thinking when it comes to like my own body and this like vessel that I'm living in. Like, no, it can be healthy. And so that's one of the things that's been really interesting and enjoyable as I've been able to participate more, kind of step out from behind the, editing screen and actually participate in stuff that, it's more than just appearance. We've had interviews with bodybuilders who talk about their struggles with mental health, right? We talk to people on all different levels in all different places, and health is a whole lot more than just appearance. And being able to have that own relationship with your health is just so important. And it is something that I try really hard to like get out there as much as I possibly can, not just on this show, but in my life, in my teaching, and with the men in my life.
That bodybuilder episode was very substantial, very influential to me too. I'm glad you brought that up because that guy talked about how he might look like he was the perfect specimen of health, but he gave us a real behind the scenes of what it takes to get there, and it didn't sound too healthy, right? Some of the things he had to do to look like that was not healthy, and that really made me reevaluate a lot of my thoughts as well about appearance and is that health. Just because I'm going to the gym, if I'm focusing on trying to build all this muscle, but I'm just beating my body up to this point of where I can't even bend down to pick something off the ground on my off days, well, is that healthy? I don't know. And I also want to say, Mitch, I think you've had a tremendous influence on how this podcast developed and the tone that it had. And this just goes to show that talking about this with other individuals is good because it can help shape a direction that maybe you hadn't considered before. And I think this notion of, to be healthy, you have to look healthy has been really important to me as I re-examine what does health mean? What are the ultimate goals of healthy? So I wanted to thank you for that. John, what do you think? Do you have a rule or belief that you've had to re-examine as a result of this podcast?
I mean, I've re-examined a lot of things since becoming more regular here. I think a lot of the men's health aspect, because in my job, I deal with men's health on, I do a lot of hormones. I do a lot of, urinary health, things like that. And that kind of becomes my world and kind of incorporates things and encompasses a lot of things. And I try to be healthy in my regular life. But I think a lot of the journeys we've talked about with being vulnerable, being open, those types of things, I don't know that I spent as much time as I probably should have with those. I mean, I knew they were things that were there. And that's where I think your comment of Mitch setting the tone and doing those things, because Mitch has been those things. And I really look up to Mitch for doing that because it allows for us to do that as well. And I think that's one of the universal things that I think we've made abundantly clear, at least in the last, several episodes I've been on, that these are okay things to do. And that it's okay to say, hey, I really look good on the outside, but where am I as a whole person? And the episode you did about your substance use, those are things that universally, a lot of people, we gravitate to that stuff because it's stuff that a lot of us struggle with in our lives. And I think those are the things that really have made me kind of pause and reflect on my personal life.
I find it so interesting that you're a urologist, you deal with some of the most intimate parts of men, right? But that's different than some of these other more vulnerable, and intimacy are very, very different.
I mean, nobody wants to talk to me about stuff when they come into my office, and you kind of have to, ease them into it. But once you start doing it, it almost, I don't want to say it's locker room talk, but it becomes more of a natural thing because it's a body part that you've had your whole life. But being vulnerable in those things, we talk about, growing up in the generations we grew up in, and there was still a lot of that stigma of, be tough, rub some dirt on it, go get it, and we've made mention of that a lot of times. And I think no matter how old I get, I still have some of that's still there.
I think another lesson, this is going to end up being the Mitch Love episode, I have a feeling. Another lesson that Mitch has taught, you just pulled out another lesson that Mitch has taught us, and that's that, modeling that it's okay to talk about these things is a good thing. And I think Mitch thinks about these things a lot more than we do, or a lot of guys do. But then just the fact that he talks about it makes me pause for a second and go, wait a minute, maybe I should actually think about that a little bit more, because I like what I'm hearing. Maybe I need to take a moment. And sometimes that's a big first step, is just taking that moment to really consider what are my thoughts on this, examine yourself a little bit. So one of the rules or beliefs I had to re-examine was this thought that weight loss was simple.
Sure.
So for a lot of my life, it was easy. Anytime I decided, I just want to lose some body fat, I can do that. It's just fewer calories in than out. You exercise consistently, you be disciplined, and that's it. But kind of since we started this podcast, it hasn't worked like that for me. I've done it all. I've tracked calories, I've exercised, I've stayed consistent, and I still haven't really lost the fat that I want to lose. And some of that is I have to be honest with, am I really being consistent? Am I really tracking, as closely as I should? But now I think that rule just doesn't apply the same way to everybody. I think there's a lot involved in that. You've got hormones, age, stress, sleep, identity, motivation, other things going on in your life. It used to be a failure if I was doing the things that I thought I should be doing to lose weight, which is eating well, exercising, getting that activity, doing those things. And now I do those things just to do those things, because I know inherently those things are good for me. And it would be great if I could lose that extra weight, and I'm still trying to lose that extra 10 pounds of fat. But if I don't, it doesn't discourage me to the point where I'm like, well, what's the point of me doing this? Because that's not the purpose anymore. So it really made me, what used to feel like failure kind of now feels more like a prompt to kind of rethink the goal entirely, with like, what are we really trying to accomplish here? So that's one of the things I had to change.
Well, and that's one of the ideas that you've kind of brought up, Scott, that I really, really appreciated, is that sometimes success isn't looking like, that appearance that, were you strict enough with yourself to be thin, blah, blah, blah. But like, if the goal is staying mobile, improving your agility, your strength, etc., like there's a lot of little and big wins that can happen along those lines that aren't nearly as, torturous or, hard on oneself, to do. And so I really have appreciated that kind of reframing of how you succeed in health.
Another thing I've enjoyed is the journey, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about those things of giving ourselves grace to be able to pace ourselves and not have to necessarily do things. Now, it's great to set lofty goals and do things, but I think that's another thing that you guys have helped me kind of soften some of those things and say, hey, you know what? Keep going. Because it's a journey. It's a process. It's not something that happens overnight.
And it's tough, right? Because on social media, you see these highly disciplined individuals that talk about all this success that they have because they've just stuck with it, right? Like it's this linear kind of trajectory, which in real life it isn't sometimes.
Right.
So it's just kind of, again, I feel like, I don't know. So I'm old enough to remember magazines. These were things they were printed on paper, and they had articles in them, like a blog post kind of, and they had pictures kind of like Instagram. And there was a muscle and fitness magazine. There are weight training magazines, all that sort of stuff. Right. And you'd see those. And I think I would have perspective back then that it would be like, well, not everybody's like this, right? Yeah. This is the 1% here on the cover of Men's Fitness. But with social media, it's like, it's hard to remember that sometimes. It seems like everybody is kicking ass and succeeding and it's just knocking it out of the park perfectly, right? And it feels silly to celebrate these little small things because they seem so trivial compared to the successes that we see. We don't see, we see the A and the Z, but we don't see everything in between, right? And sometimes people don't tell that part of the story. So I think that's an important part of the story to tell, and being comfortable with that. So I love that you brought that up, John, because that has been a major paradigm for me as well. So what's one thing that you guys keep doing, even if it doesn't always feel successful? So maybe over the past 6 years, there's something that you've been attempting to achieve or you've been working on. And as we look back 6 years in the past, we're like, wow, I would think that I should have had that figured out by now, but I don't. But I keep going, and maybe it doesn't always feel successful. Dr. Smith, do you have anything like that, like a habit or approach or a way of thinking that still matters to you?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me is just the challenge I have of, I was very athletic growing up. I played a lot of sports. I played even at like the equivalent of like junior college stuff where I played a lot even into college, and I was fit for a long time. And then I got hurt. I blew my knee out, and then I gained a bunch of weight because then you can't really do anything while you're rehabbing. Then you start rehabbing and you're heavy. And I've been trying to get some of that weight off, and I've had this yo-yo up and down. and I've had to reevaluate what I should look like, because in my head I'm still 25, and I think I've mentioned that a few times on this podcast. Is I still think I'm that young guy a lot of times until I try to sprint with another 25-year-old, like a 25-year-old, and I go, holy crap, I'm 45. I'm not 25, right? And I think that's one of the things over the past several years that I've had to reevaluate and have to, my mental change and paradigm shift of what health should look like to me now. Because I know what health was then. I was running 30 miles a week, if not more. I was, playing sports 5, 6, 7 days a week. I was very healthy, very active, eating healthy. I was thin. I was, 185 pounds, 7% body fat. And now I'm, 200 pounds and, probably 30% body fat. Which I should go get checked. But I think to me, that's the biggest thing for me that I'm imperfect at, that I'm trying to just continue this. It's not a battle. It's just reminding myself that it's okay to be me now. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
it does. And I love that. I really do love that.
I think reevaluating as we move through life, what that means. And I do admire the fact that you've been really sticking with this. Like, it could be easy just because you've talked about how it's been yo-yoing up and down. Mm-hmm. And just like that person on Instagram where we only see the A and the Z, we don't see the fluctuations in between. Like, it isn't always a linear journey.
Right.
And sometimes it's a lifetime, use the word battle or struggle, or, you just have to pay attention to it your whole life. It's just something you're going to have to deal with. How great to be young, right? Like, in shape, eat
metabolism's
anything.
Running at all cylinders. Yeah.
Not only that, not a care in the world. I mean, I'm overstating that to some extent, but I think that even that we're talking a lot about physical health, but mental health is a big part of what we talk about here on the show. Even like that mental baggage that you build up over a lifetime isn't there.
Yeah.
So as you were saying, what you were saying about your physical weight, it's really strange. It threw me into this idea of this mental weight, this emotional weight that we also might gain over the course of a lifetime, just moving through the world, experiencing hardships and setbacks and stuff, or frustrations, or whatever emotional or mental issues we might have, that, continuing to work on that and realizing that's something you might have to work on, just like the weight as you get older, a little bit more, religiously, it's kind of a weird connection that I made, but that's what I made.
Well, even as someone who has, I mean, I was not a star athlete. I mean, I was the grumpy goth kid in the corner who was writing poetry. Like, that was me, right? And so, I mean, I love so much this idea of finding out what health looks like to me now. Like, John, that really hit me deep, because it's just like, I don't know, I always being kind of not quite like the vision of health for most of my life, like, to be able to say, you know what, I'm okay right now. I don't have to be, I will be healthy in 10 years from now, or I will be healthy when. It's like, what can I do right now? And what does health look like to me right this very moment in my own skin? And man, that is such a nice, more attainable, healthy relationship to have with yourself than anything else.
Episode 200, Mitch Lovefest continues. That's a paradigm that you brought to the show that I really appreciated. Like, and you talked about early on, like, you had to find out what health means to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to mean the same thing that society says it should mean. It could be completely individual for each person. And that, there's a mental health component to that as well, right? Like, just being happy and being content where you are with those things, as opposed to thinking you always have to strive for this ideal that maybe just isn't right for you, or that you never wanted in the first place. So one of the things I keep doing, and it's hard, and as I tie back into this, as we get older, we have more of this emotional mental baggage. I think it's just showing up and moving and caring, even when I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. So celebrate small successes. I've cut back on drinking. I exercise more regularly than I ever have. Even when my body doesn't change the way I want to, I know that those choices are adding up to something. So I'm just continuing to just always try to push forward. And then I've also been working imperfectly on my emotional health, which is still tough for me. Earlier in my life, I had a sense of purpose and direction when I was in radio. It was what I wanted to do. I was driven. I wanted to be successful in my career. But as I've gotten older, like, some of those fires, even when I first started this job, I had fire. But some of those fires kind of fade out. Like I like to say, like, I feel like I've done the things I wanted to try to accomplish, but yet we have to continue on, right? So I've tried to reevaluate those things in my job and in my life that make me feel useful and productive, because I did a little bit of work. Have you guys ever heard of this book, Now Discover Your Strengths by Don Clifton?
No.
It's interesting. It talks about this idea that we each have inherent strengths. And instead of concerning ourselves with trying to improve our weaknesses, we should identify the strengths, the things that other people say, wow, that just seems like it comes so easy to you. And just really lean into those things, because those are the things that give us joy and a sense of purpose. That was a book I read a couple years ago. So that's what I'm really trying to work on. I'm trying to find those things that tie into that, and being useful and productive is one of those. As opposed to just shutting down and going, well, I just guess I just drudge through each day. And it kind of always doesn't feel like progress. Some days I feel a lot more useful and productive than other days, but it feels like I'm making the effort, and it feels like momentum. So I just keep it going. So that's one of the things I keep doing, even though it doesn't always feel successful.
You've got a goal. I think that's another thing that this podcast has helped me with is just reevaluating and setting goals, because I did that really, really well for a long time. And we've talked about that on a number of occasions as well, of, just it's okay to miss those marks, but to have them, you still got to have them,
To add on to it, like to know that other guys at different points in their life are maybe struggling with one thing or another, maybe mentally, right? And to find out that, like, well, I'm going to try to do better tomorrow. I'm going to try to do, something a little different. I'm going to try to change my diet a little bit. Like all of those ideas of, I want to be better, but not necessarily trying to say, here's what better looks like, right? Just, hey, I want to be a little better than I was yesterday.
And if I don't feel as though I'm getting better, evaluate what I'm doing, I think. And one of the things I've really been trying to do is then, like, all right, well, this isn't working right now. The thing that did get me through the past 6 months, what's something else I can try? Like, and it feels a little bit like failure, because you would think you should find that one thing that works, and then that's going to carry you through.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of coming into the conclusion that sometimes it's maybe just 6 months at a time. And then you got to find the
Sure.
next shiny object that helps you get to your goals, the next way you're going to approach or try something. All right. As we wrap this up, this is kind of the little last part. So since episode 1, or since 6 years ago, where are you at right now? What does it look like right now? We've kind of talked about some things that, at the top of the show that have changed, but what is your blueprint at this current moment? Let's start with Mitch.
When I was originally asked this question, I spent actually a lot of time going back through because the 200 snuck up on me,
No kidding, right?
Sneaky 200.
But to go through them and just to see one after another, like episode of letter to or from your past self, episode 104, right? We wrote letters to ourselves, which was kind of fun and goofy and maybe something we should try again, but meaningful. I mean, I don't mean to downplay it or whatever, but to doing things that are grateful, to the 7 challenge, to the whatever. Like, the biggest blueprint for me that I've learned from this show, being someone who has, gone from where I was back in my late 20s to where I am today with a big help from the show and all the people, is to learn to try things out, right? That there isn't an easy, simple answer for how to do everything. And even if there was, it doesn't necessarily fit everyone the same, right? I had never ran, I never jogged, I never ran, because I'm like, I don't want to count my cadences, and I don't want to blah, 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 blah. But, I found a murder podcast that I can listen to, and I'm doing it again. I'm jogging again, and I am feeling more healthy. I am sleeping better. I am eating better. And I'm working out more regularly. All of those things make me feel better at 36 than I've felt in basically my whole life. And so,
really?
Yeah. I was thinking that just the other day. Like, I'm not as thin as I was in my 20s, but I feel so much better, especially with mental health of all things. And so, yeah, the blueprint is keep trying things out, things that used to work but don't work now. Like, it's not a failure. One of the things I've kind of realized in all the years doing the show, is that guys have a lot of like failure states, right? Like if you're not this, you're a failure. If you're not this, you're a failure. If you didn't try hard enough, you're a failure. And it's just like, man, what room does that leave to like experiment, to work towards something, to whatever? Like you got to be the best right out the gate. And so, yeah, just trying out what works for you. And sometimes it works and sometimes it's, that's not for me.
I've heard a saying, a reason, a season, and a lifetime, and that was around people in our lives, but I think it could also revolve around habits or things.
Oh, for sure.
Like there might be, for 3 months you do something and that really helps you with whatever it is you're working on, but then it's gone, right?
Yeah.
Like there was a reason for it. Maybe there was something that worked for a year and now all of a sudden it's not working the same way. And maybe we do discover those lifetime things. But I love that the fact that you've reinforced that it's not failure if you try. So if you try journaling, and you stick with it for 6 months and then you bail, that's not a fail. Maybe it served its purpose. That was the season for you.
Yeah.
And now it's on to something else. Yeah. So yeah, it's good. John, what do you think?
Man, I got a lot of things that I could think about, but the one that keeps coming to me is just really two things: being honest with myself and then staying positive. Because it's really easy to kind of just make an excuse or whatever. But like, I know when I'm doing that to myself.
Sure.
And that's not that I have a problem being honest with myself, but I think that there's times where I'm more stringent with that and I make myself stick to it, because when I am honest with myself and I'm just true to me, because when I do the things that I know I shouldn't do with food or with lack of exercise or whatever, like I know. Right. And that's one of the things to me that I think is important. But then also the thing that's helped me, I think, the most in my life to get where I'm at is to stay positive and look for the good that can come. And I think that's probably overarches the other, because it helps me get to that next level, helps me to be where I want to be. And it's going to keep me going and striving to be successful throughout my life. And that's one of the things my mom kind of instilled in me was, you'll never get anywhere if you're Eeyore.
Sure.
And, you'll just sit there and be sorry for yourself. You need to get off your butt and realize like there's great things to be had and go have them. And so I can thank her for that. But yeah, I think those are the two things that I'm going to need to do to create that continued feeling of success and actual success.
When I was reflecting on episode 200, I had a huge amount of imposter syndrome because of the reason that we wanted to start this podcast was like, I was convinced that I had the answers. I was convinced that I could help guys lose weight. I could help them become healthier. I could help them with all these things. And then 6 years goes on and I struggle with all these things. Like I am not the guy that looks like he's preaching. Like nobody should take advice from me. So this was a therapeutic sort of an exercise as we prepared for episode 200, because I started thinking, well, but that's not what it is. That's not what it is for most guys. Right. That's what it is for maybe a few, or what a few would tell you. But I think we all feel a little unsuccessful or a little like failures, or like, well, why am I even bothering to tell what it is I do? Because I'm certainly not the epitome of health. But I think the talking about it and the being honest about it. And there were some other themes that came up here today that we've talked about, being kind to yourself about it. I think those are some things that I need to remember, and this episode helped me to remember. As far as physical health, I just can give you a little like snapshot of what I've got going on right now, but it's built around movement and consistency and trying to stay connected to my purpose. As I age, I want to stay mobile.
Yeah.
I want to keep that blood moving. We had an episode a little while back where we talked about, blue collar guys and do they need to exercise? And one of the things that really hit me in that episode was this notion that sure, they work all day and some of it's strenuous, but they're not really getting their heart rate up to where they need to. And blood moving through your body is a good thing. So you need to do some of that sustained upper level cardio. And that really hit like this thought of keeping this life force moving through me, and it also helps you stay low risk for metabolic disease. So I've kind of shifted my workouts a little bit. Again, they don't revolve around losing fat necessarily anymore. They don't revolve around looking huge, but they do revolve around how do I keep this blood moving? And as long as I can kind of, keep consistency and stay connected to my purpose, I think that will go a long way to fuel me into the future. So that is what I'm thinking about right now.
That's awesome.
Plus, also, it's great to have people around you that you can talk through with, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well,
and like you guys.
I was going to bring up the point of you feeling like the imposter syndrome. Here's the funny thing. I've listened to many of the episodes since I joined on with you guys, kind of see where the journey has taken us. And to be honest, you feel like imposter syndrome, but I want you to think back of all these 200 episodes of how many of these people came on the podcast and told you were wrong. Because all of us feel the same way, right?
Yeah.
We just,
right.
When people get on this podcast, you got this bodybuilder, you got mental health providers, you have doctors, you have
marathon runners,
you've got friends you used to drink with, you've got all these people that came on. How many of them came on and directly refuted any of the things we've said today? And I don't say that to pat ourselves on the back, and I don't think that we run an echo chamber, because I think the thing is we have enough diverse people coming on this podcast that I don't think that we've created that. I think what we've created is something that's authentic, and you're not an imposter, even though it feels that way to you because of the mindset you brought into it. And when you said that, I was like, you know what, Scott, you think that, but really you've brought all of these different personalities together, and we're all struggling with the same stuff, and we're all succeeding in some areas and absolutely a dumpster fire in others. And that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what this episode has really made me realize too, is looking back, listening to some of the past episodes, looking at different things and saying, okay, where are we? Right. And I don't know. I wanted to say that because I don't think you're an imposter. I think that you've been as authentic as Mitch has in the episodes that I've done with you. And I think it's phenomenal because we've brought in this wide range of guests on the program, and everyone shares a very similar sentiment. And I think that's the authenticity of Who Cares About Men's Health.
Thanks. I appreciate that, John. It's strange that I get done saying I feel like an imposter, and then I'm going to say what I just going to say now. I'm kind of proud of this show. I'm kind of proud of the fact that we are not the typical men's health. You got to get up at 5 o'clock and you got to grind. You got to make sure your tea is maximized and that your workouts are optimized, and you got to be a killer out there. Like, it is authentic, and I'm glad that comes across that way to you when you listen, John, because I think the world needs more of that. Like, there's all types of guys, there are guys that live what I just said, and that's what they like to live. But there are guys like me that don't like to live that. And I think we've given people that don't necessarily want to live like that an alternative and some other things to think about that aren't just, what's in the kind of mainstream of men's health. All right, gentlemen, anything else before we wrap up?
Thanks for letting me be a part of it, gentlemen. This has been awesome for me. I mean, 200, I wasn't here for, the first 79 episodes, but I really look forward to this, and it's something that I really enjoy. So I want to thank you two for, pulling me in.
Well, you're going to be here for the next 200, like it or not.
Don't tease me, my man. I'll be here.
Mitch, thoughts before we leave?
Just, if you're listening, I am so moved that there are people out there that are not only listening, but actually like changing what they're doing and how they're living their lives. And just as a health communicator, as a guy, as someone who never thought I would be doing anything like this, I just want to thank anyone out there who's listening. And man, oh man, just reach out to the other guys in your life, because they might need, another guy to talk to every so often about this type of stuff. Because that's really been where the power I've seen in me and some of our guests, with some of our hosts, etc., is just being that authentic self with each other is just so important in all aspects of health.
All right. On to episode 201 next time, I guess. This is Who Cares About Men's Health. If you have thoughts about today's episode, any reflections over the past 200 episodes, if you really want to make us feel good, you can tell us if we've, changed your thinking or have helped you in any way, shape, or form. Because, ultimately, I guess if we had 0 listeners, this has been really great for me.
We don't have 0 listeners, but yes.
But it would be nice. It would be nice. Yeah, no, we don't. We've seen the numbers. But it would be nice to know that it has had some sort of an impact on you. So if you want to share that, we would love that. You can send your email to hello@thescoperadio.com. hello@thescoperadio.com. Here's to another 200, gentlemen. Thanks for listening. Thanks for caring about men's health.